In this video, I will show you how I mix watercolor skin tones without overthinking, from very light ones to very dark, using mostly just 3 universal colors, no skin tone palette needed. So I first want to show you 3 basic colors that I use to mix almost all of the skin tones. This combination can be very powerful. This is cadmium orange from Winsor & Newton. I like their cadmium-free version, which is what I am buying regularly from the art store. This is cadmium-free red from Winsor & Newton also. You can use cadmium red, but I like less toxicity in my paints because of my health. And then there's cobalt blue. I buy Winsor & Newton paints, but I also buy Schminky Horadam paints. I prefer artist-grade paint that do not have fillers in them, that have only pigment and gum arabic. This is why I think the limited palette is absolutely fantastic. Because you use less colors, you can purchase the higher quality paints and that will give you better result. With skin tones, it really shows in a final piece whether you are using hobby paints or the artist grade. So for the basic colors that can be mixed together, it's always great if you can find a way to purchase the higher quality ones. By the way, you can mix along if you have these colors or something similar to them. This is the orange. Most of the time when I'm in studio, I just use these white porcelain plates. White is good for a palette because you can see the shades. It's important for me. First, we will discuss and mix for light skin tones because they're much easier. They're actually very easy in watercolor. To create a base for the skin tone, you need water. You can grab a bit of orange into that water and you can grab a bit of red. You need to balance this mixture and add water in it. It's absolutely crucial. If you do not add enough water, you might end up with really opaque mixture of paint. It's not gonna look the way you want it to look. It looks like very intense color mixture at first, but remember, with watercolor we always adjust. We have to get used to the change of color on the paper because the color fades a lot. So this is the skin tone mixture. There is your skin tone. Remember, you have to add water. Now, some skin types, they contain a bit more of the yellowness, which comes from the orange. For that skin color, you have to add more orange in the mixture. And your mix will change, will look a bit different than this one. When you have orange dominating this mixture, you will get something like this. Some skin types will have more red in them. When you add more red into the skin tone mixture, you can get a skin tone that leans towards red. Something like this. But remember, always add water. When you add more water, you dilute the pigment. The pigment gets thinner, it gets more transparent. You can get more light into the skin, just like here. You can see already that this is just 2 colors and the same combination, but depending on the ratios, you can make it look very different. That's one skin tone base, and then we have the cool color, which is blue. I'm gonna put it on the other side here. Cobalt blue is a perfect cool shade that will create a subtle shift in the skin tone without making it too muddy or too dark. So I want to show you one example. You can see here that we have very light skin tone. In some areas it is leaning towards orange. In other areas it is leaning towards red. So you can see how you will need to balance the base of the skin tone depending on what your reference looks like. But most of the skin tone is in the light. So when light hits the face, in this area of the face that's closer to the light source, it contains the warmer skin tones. But then the face starts turning away from the light source. Here, this is also a skin tone, but you need to cool the skin tone a little bit because it is falling into shadow. And so you need to grab your skin tone mixture and add something cool in it. So in this case, it's cobalt blue. Let me show how to mix this. So we have the skin tone base here. And I'm going to grab a little bit of the blue and add it into the skin tone. You don't paint with the blue, you paint with the skin tone that's been cooled with blue. And this is what it's going to be looking like. The skin tone looks slightly different than these ones. These are only containing warm colors. This one contains a blue color. That is the base layer. What I also like is to combine the orange with the blue and create some sort of green here aside. They do make lovely green. The green is not intense. You can use this green to add into the skin tone as well, to make it look like this, and it can come in super handy. Again, let me show you that on a photograph. Here in this area around the lips, also in the corner of the mouth, there is greener undertone in the skin, which I often notice in these reference photos, and they're almost always, when I paint portrait, I can find spots that contain a bit of green, and this is also what you can do to mix the blue with orange and use it. This is the base skin tone. The base is what you use when you paint the first layer. My basis for the shadow is red and blue. We will get the red and the blue and mix them together, and you can get like a basic mixture that looks something like this. You can use that for shading. You can dilute this mixture a bit more. You can use more water if you have larger area of shadow that's not so dark. Here you would use the more diluted mixture for the shadow, but you can use it really thick. So when you use a thicker mixture of these two colors, you can get near black. If you use artist grade paints, they're very pigmented, which means that they're strong colors. Their thick mixtures will be very strong, will be able to give you intense colors that you can create details with. If you use student grade paints, some of them can be very high quality, but usually they do not have enough pigment to be strong. That mixture can also lean towards either red, so you can make it warmer, or you can make it cooler. So when you add a bit more of the red, you will get a warmer mixture. If you use a bit more blue in the mixture, then you will get a cooler mix, like that. Both of them can be very useful for painting shadows. See, it's the same 3 colors and so many combinations. When deciding which shadows are going to be more warm and more cool, you have to observe your reference. Usually the form shadow, like a shadow on the cheeks, tend to be a little bit warmer. Drop shadows and shadows in occlusions, like here where the light doesn't really reach, is like in these spots, is going to be cooler, a bit darker. But you also have to decide whether you're going to use a thicker mixture or the mixture that's more diluted for shadows. First layer, the base layer, is usually more diluted, but when you paint shadows, there's gonna be diluted shadows and also thicker paint for the shadows. So before we jump into my skin tone palette additions and dark skin tone mixes, I want to quickly thank Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is an online learning platform with creative classes taught by world-class creatives, from professional illustrators and renowned graphic designers to successful entrepreneurs. I learned a lot with Skillshare when I was starting out, and I still use the platform to level up my skills or to just step outside my comfort zone, which is exactly what I did this week when I took Landscape Fundamentals Confident and Colorful series by Susan Allard. And even though it was a landscape class, it was incredibly inspiring when it comes to experimenting with color and composition. I also teach on Skillshare myself. You can find 7 of my classes on the platform, with new classes and challenges coming in 2026. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, plus you can gift Skillshare memberships to your friends and family. Get started today. So now that I introduced the basic palette of 3 colors, I want to also introduce some additions. These are not necessary. You can absolutely paint with just the basic 3 colors, and if you feel overwhelmed or just starting out with portraits, that's what you should do. But there are a few colors that you can try that can take this whole range and push it further to make it even more nuanced, and I like to use alizarin crimson for that. One is permanent alizarin crimson from Winsor & Newton. I also like to use schminky version or the permanent alizarin crimson from Daniel Smith. And this one, this is red, that's a bit cooler. It looks like this. I like to add this color into the basic wash in some areas. For example, lips. You can absolutely do lips with cadmium red, but if you use alizarin crimson with the cadmium red, then you can get more natural looking lip color. I use this one also for the cheeks. I do not really mix it with much of anything. I just grab the alizarin crimson, dilute it, and add it into the wash. I try to experiment every now and then and use a bit of a different setup just to see what's possible. First thing that I tried in one of my recent portraits is to substitute the cobalt blue for a violet-y color that I really like, and this is cobalt violet hue from Schminky Horadam. Found out that it can be used to cool down the skin tone. Here's what it looks like. What is special about it is that it granulates, so it has a bit of a grainy texture. When you use it into the basic skin tone mixture, it gives you a bit of a rougher feel. The paints split a basic skin tone, and then you mix in a little bit of the purple to cool it, which is doing the same like we did here. And I find that this also works beautifully, and it is subtle, so it doesn't create greener undertones but more purple undertones, and with some skin tone types it looks absolutely wonderful. This is what the final skin tone looks like. There's a little bit of the texture also. Another addition that I also sometimes try is using sap green. This is permanent sap green, and it will work similarly to what you saw here, but the sap green is a bit more bright, and then you cool it with the sap green and you get slightly more like vivid combination than with the blue, but this one is more different from the original one, and this one is similar to the original one and also interesting. And now I want to show you how to mix dark skin tone combinations. Darker skin tones in watercolor can be very tricky. A watercolor is a transparent medium. Getting darks is one of the most common struggle. So we're going to be using orange and red just like with the lighter skin tones, but instead of a cobalt blue, which is quite light, we need blue that's a bit darker. I use ultramarine, which is staple on many palettes. Orange, red, and now we add the blue ultramarine. With light skin tones, it's a combination of orange and red. It's gonna be similar to here, but the problem is that a dark skin, even in the light, so even the base skin color is darker. For the dark skin tones, highlight is also white. And here is the color that I would say is the base skin color. And you can see how dark it gets already. So you create your skin tone mixture and you put just a little bit, like just a hint of ultramarine already in the skin. And that is the basic skin tone. This will be the basic skin tone. Skin tone also varies. We need to come up with the version that contains a bit more orange and a version that contains a bit more red, like here on the nose it's a bit more red. I'm going to mix skin tone that has a bit more orange in it, a bit more orange, but always contains a little bit of the red. So this is a bit more dark, but this is the orangey skin tone, and then adding a bit more red in it, mixing it up. Here I also tend to add a little bit less water for the first layer already. Always add a hint of ultramarine for the base layer. Here is the redder part. Same color combination, and look at the difference. And now the medium skin tone, I'm going to add a little bit more of the ultramarine in it, creating a skin tone for the part that's going to be in shadow. This would be the skin tone on the shadowy side of the face. Not a shadow yet, but the base skin tone here on the shadowy part of the face you can compare. You can already see what a beautiful range the ultramarine and cadmium orange can create. Just like we did with the lighter skin tone, even here the greener mixture will be useful. The green can be mixed from orange and ultramarine, just like before we mixed from orange and cobalt blue. I'm gonna mix some here aside. So this is going to be the green. I'm gonna mix the green in it, and I'm going to get something like this, maybe even more greener, a bit more green, maybe even slightly more greener. Almost always it's the corners of the mouth, it's below the nostrils, some areas of the neck, but it's just always in the skin you can find spots that are slightly more green. Go ahead and mix these, and we are gonna take a look at the shadows. This is the base. Most of the time I just use the red with the ultramarine blue, and this is your shadows, maybe a bit more blue. This is your shadows. The shadow mixture is slightly darker than when you use cobalt. With light complexion it was something like this. It's going to be slightly darker, but the hue is very similar to the previous color combination. You can always make it a bit more blue. In darker skin tones, sometimes I found that the shadow looks almost blue. It is always, I keep the warm color in the mixture. I never paint with just pure blue on the skin, because skin contains veins. To me, the color in shadow area, it appears almost like this, especially like here, look at the neck. Some shadows will be warmer, and there you can use a bit more red. I ran out of red for shading. One of the most frequent colors that I buy is red and blue always for portraits. There you can have a mixture that looks something like this. Even more red it can have. Even more red, I think. So that looks a bit warmer than the original one. Here. And also we can dilute, but for darker skin tone I dilute less, but it's watercolor, so you need to always paint with water. You're gonna have to use near black in some areas when painting darker skin. That's just because it's just there. The nostrils, the corners of the mouth, the mid part of the mouth, a lot of the areas on the neck. And you can get that with ultramarine pretty easy when you combine it with red, but less water, just thick pigment. If you have artist grade paints that contain a lot of pigment, this is what you get. It's just combination that creates black for you. So you do not need a skin tone palette, you do not need way too many colors. You can just use 3 colors to do. Look at this, this is a whole range of skin tones. Just like before, I want to use additions. Sometimes I use alizarin crimson as well, just like before. The alizarin crimson can be super helpful for dark skin tones as well. You can apply it in the basic skin tone mixture. You can mix it in to create more depth with a little bit of alizarin in it, and then you get something like this. So when you combine alizarin crimson with the ultramarine blue, what you get is a beautiful vivid purple, this kind of purple, more vibrant than this one, and you can also use that in the portrait. So you can incorporate this color into the skin tone as well. And it's all just with the alizarin crimson. I do not have anything else that I would like to add into the deeper skin tone mixtures. It's just these 3 colors plus optional alizarin crimson. So this is the basic color palette that you need, not a skin tone palette, but a very universal palette of colors that can be mixed together, that are high quality, that will produce mixes that can be watered down and look brilliant, but also can be thick and used in a way that preserves vibrancy but also creates darks. Now that you know how to mix skin tones with confidence, the next step is learning how to actually use them on a face, and for that I have another video right here. It's called 6 Pro Watercolor Portrait Techniques, and I'm sure that you will find it really helpful. I'll see you there!